John Titor, Part 2. December 6, 2000. Q. What is music like in the future? Most of the same music you enjoy is available on archive. However, the days of megastars playing multiple track music and lip syncing on a huge stage are pretty much isolated to your time period. Like everything else, music is much less centralized. The general trend is away from computer-generated music and more towards real people playing real instruments. Music is much more of a personal experience. More people know how to read music and play together in small groups. Q. What is the entertainment industry like in the future? Again, entertainment is less centralized. There are movies and TV, but everything is distributed over the net, and more people produce their own shows. Q. Could you travel in time to escape your original world line? Would you be looked down on? I suppose that would work if you were trying to escape a natural disaster, but you must consider that trying to escape by time traveling has its own problems. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by being looked down on. Q. Is there a world government in place by the year 2011? On my world line in 2011, the United States is in the middle of a civil war that has dramatic effects on most of the other Western governments. Q. Earlier, you said something was wrong with Unix on your world line. What's wrong with it? Yes, and with yours too. I have to believe that there must be a Unix expert out there someplace that can confirm that. I'm not exactly sure what the technical issue is, but I believe some sort of Unix system registry stops in 2038. Q. Does the conflict between Arabs and Jews have anything to do with the war you describe? Yes. Q. When you first started posting, did anyone believe you? I don't know if anyone believes me now. You must realize that I don't expect anyone to believe me, nor does it affect me one way or the other. I enjoy these conversations. What would you expect a time traveler to say or do in your time? Q. How do the singularities keep from overheating in your time machine? Very highly technical cooling stuff. Q. How far have computers and softwares progressed in the future? I would say the biggest difference is the reliability of the hardware and software. It absolutely amazes me how willing people are here to accept computer and software failures on such a regular basis. I was very surprised to see how common it is. You can look forward to very stringent manufacturing parameters and programming discipline. Think back to the early days of the computer and how much work and cleverness it took to fit those programs into such small areas of memory. Has more and cheaper memory brought better programs, or just more programs? As far as technical specifics, I'm afraid I can't go into so much detail. However, I will try and tell you that processing speed and memory size take dramatic leaps forward. Q. Please explain how magnetic fields and tachyons are involved with your machine. I'm afraid my notebook on Maxwell's equations isn't with me, and I must say again that I am not a physicist. As far as tachyons go, it is my understanding that they cannot exist at all unless they are created and traveling faster than light. As far as time travel goes, I'm afraid tachyons are merely useful for describing various quirky effects of strange matter. I will post again as soon as I get a chance. December 10th, 2000. I will try to answer all your questions. However, I have noticed that there seems to be a difficulty in entertaining a conversation in the middle. Most of the following questions I have answered at length in previous posts. I understand how important it is to you to have these answers when new people read portions of the postings, but I find it tiring to keep repeating myself. Any suggestions would be appreciated. Q. Who won the Super Bowl in 2001? I do not answer questions like this. Although I don't really know the motivation for the question, I can guess. If a time traveler had knowledge of your future and you can only ask one question, would this be it? Besides, can you tell me if it rained in New York on June 4th, 1932? You are from the future, so you should know that. Q. How can you travel in time since the Earth changes position? How do you avoid physical objects at your destination? How can you breathe? This is actually a very good question, and parts and pieces of the answer are scattered in previous postings. I am often surprised it is not the first one asked. You are correct. The problem is actually the most difficult part of time travel. Although some of your assumptions about matter displacement are a bit off, the problem is real. Inside the displacement unit are a series of very sensitive clocks and gravity sensors. This system is called the VGL, Variable Gravity Lock. In simple terms, before the unit leaves a world line, it takes a base reading of the local gravity and adjusts the Tipler sinusoid to lock into that position. Although the temporal physics of this statement are wrong, in effect, it holds you to the Earth during travel. It periodically checks to see that the field has not varied. If it does, it stops and reverses course or drops out at that point. Buildings and other terrain features are avoided in the same way. Yes, we do bring oxygen in the vehicle with us, but we do not lose atmospheric pressure. Q. If the time machine was on for a split second and then returned, wouldn't it appear someplace far off in space? Please see VGL system above. Also, please be aware that from the viewpoint of the time traveler, the displacement unit actually left and then returned. The viewer does not experience this. Think of it as a go substatement in a computer program. Q. What type of money do you use in the future? It's not very different than it is now. Yes, we have money and credit cards. However, like everything else, the monetary system is decentralized. Banking is based mostly around the community structure. There are no multinational banking or computerized economic systems. There are also no income taxes. Q. Are radio location systems still used on livestock? Some of the larger farm communities use electronic markers and fences. I'm not a farmer, so I don't have much detail about that. Q. Is the GPS system still used in the future? Oh yes, in fact, the unit I have with me works here. I'm not sure why that surprises me. There are also a great many communications and internet satellite systems. Q. Do you still use the American flag? What does it look like in the future? Yes, we still have the flag. There is a debate about changing it from 50 stars to 5. Q. Do any states have new names? Not that I can think of. I am aware that some smaller towns changed their names after the war, and most universities have the word fort before them on my world line. Q. How much training is required before you can time travel? Can you make any repairs to your time machine? I started training on the recommendation of my PS officer when I got out of school in 34. I graduated in March of 35. Actual hands-on training started soon after that, and I left in April of 2036. No, there are not very many repairs I can make to the unit. The unit is built very well, but the tolerances are very small. I could probably repair the electrical system, and it will accept inputs from older computers. Q. Is it still safe to fish in the future? Yes, we can fish. There are some areas that are still too dangerous, so we don't fish in those areas. Q. Have any time travelers come to your world line in 2036? Not that I'm aware of, but I accept the possibility. Q. Is there public transportation in the future? A high-speed train system connects the larger cities. Roads are still used for cars, and many people ride horses and bikes. Q. What items will you take back with you? Books. I'm also taking copies of family photos that were lost during the war. Q. How long have you been here? That I must keep to myself right now. Q. Don't you worry about the government finding you? Not really. In order to find me, they would have to believe time travel is possible. Q. Are you taking any pictures and videos? Oh, yes. Q. Can you give us any details on natural disasters and temperatures in the future? That's one area I've decided not to talk about, sorry. The average temperature worldwide is a bit cooler. Q. Are any other time travelers from the future with you now? No. They're off doing something else, I'm sure. Q. Is time travel discussed on the web in the future? Do you recognize any websites now from the future? Time travel is a major part of social discussion. I'd have to check when I get back. Most of the larger servers that were in the major cities were lost or destroyed. Q. Is there any strange connection between you and the John Titor that was here on this world line before you? What do your parents tell him about you? He calls me uncle. Yes, there is a connection. He feels like a younger brother. Sometimes I get mixed emotions watching him and I realize I'm watching the origins of my personality. I tend to playfully criticize my father about that. December 13th, 2000. Well, it looks like the election is almost over. I have been quite busy in the last few days and I appreciate everyone's patience. I should be thanking you for listening. Even if everything I have said before means nothing, I expect it has at least been entertaining. I went through the postings looking for questions I have not addressed yet. I hope I got to all of them. I give my email remotely through about 3 different systems, and I use one of your handheld computer units to write with. In a few days, I would like to send Pamela a list of questions on my own. As you know, one of my areas of expertise is in history, and the information I have gathered has been invaluable. Although I am not leaving right away, I would like to include some of your thoughts in my report. Q. Is it possible for someone who reads this to invent time travel? When John leaves, as one will remember him, no one will remember him, and this will all be forgotten. This statement is quite insightful. One of the reasons I have been communicating this way is so that others who I have directed here can see some of the information I have shared with you. Q. Won't a small divergence between world lines cause everything to look different as compared to your world line? The divergence measurement refers to the local gravitational field compared to the point of origin. It is merely an empirical indicator of overall change in a world line. Some things that are quite different on one world line have very little effect as time passes, and the other world lines appear to converge again and look very similar. World lines changes are not exponential. They act more like chaotic attractors with varying effects depending on the size and location. Q. If multiple world theory is correct and there are 2 of you, one of you has to be the real one. I find it unsettling that you look at us as representatives of the people from the past. One reason I think you may be a time traveler is because I don't understand or relate to you at all. You are correct. This world line is not mine, but it looks very similar. It may be compared to reading 2 books that are the same. I can jump back and forth between them and still see the same story. I do not consider you true representatives of my world line, but I do know something of how the story ends. In consideration of Everett Wheeler, the reason we don't know if Schrodinger's cat is dead is because it might have had a time machine. Q. I think Russia is very likely to attack the United States. It's hard to imagine being here to see it. You were also correct, but I want to add a twist to your thinking. Russia's enemy is the United States government, not you, the average person. Q. If this world line is 2% divergent from your world line, how do you get home? If you go forward from here, won't the divergence approach infinity? Yes, this is true. If I go forward on this world line, the future will not be my future. I get home by going back to 1975 before I arrived and then going forward to 2036. Your deductions are quite accurate. It's possible to go forward to your 2036 and it would look nothing like mine. Q. I have an old working IBM computer. Maybe I should stash it away for 30 years and see what happens. Toss it. The 5100 is the interesting machine. Q. Does the current relationships between Arabs and Jews have anything to do with the coming war? Real disruptions in world events begin with the destabilization of the West as a result of degrading U.S. foreign policy and consistency. This becomes apparent around 2004 as civil unrest develops near the next presidential election. The Jewish population in Israel is not prepared for a true offensive war. They are prepared for the ultimate defense. Wavering Western support for Israel is what gives Israel's neighbors the confidence to attack. The last resort for the defensive Israel and its offensive Arab neighbors is to use weapons of mass destruction. In the grand scheme of things, the war in the Middle East is part of what's to come, not the cause. Q. What can you tell us about atoms that seem to be linked at a distance? Perhaps you could describe what you mean. It appears to be space travel or the effect of similar atomic particles that seems to be related over great distances. Again, please forgive my ignorance. I am not a trained physicist. Q. Does anything happen in the year 2012? Will the world end? In my 2012, I was 14 years old, spending most of my time living, running, and hiding in the woods and rivers of Central Florida. The Civil War was in the 7th year, and the World War III was 3 years away. Yes, there are unusual events in 2012, but they do not cause the world to end. Unfortunately, I have decided not to discuss events that you or I can do nothing about. It is important that they be a surprise. Perhaps you are familiar with the story of the Red Sea and the Egyptians? Q. What can you tell us about various paranormal conspiracy theories and weather control in the future? I must admit I am unfamiliar with most of what you have asked here. I am aware of the HARP system, but I don't know how that would control the weather with it. Q. Please describe any details you can about the education system in the future. The education system has been through many changes. School in 2036 is no longer a political indoctrination system, and students learn how to learn. Since community activity varies from place to place, the emphasis on basic reading, math, and language is augmented with skills particular to the community. One school may emphasize farming, while another teaches woodworking. Having children is a bit different and less common in 2036. A typical school day involves a setting very much like it was 100 years ago, with smaller classes and few administrators to teachers. Other areas of study that are more common now are history, citizenship, and personal economics. Q. Do the Arabs and Jews become entangled in the Civil War of the USA? They are not directly involved, but political situations are dependent on Western stability, which collapses in 2005. Q. The Arab countries appear to have weapons of mass destruction. Do they use them? Not against America, but they are used against each other. Q. Please post a picture of money used in the future. That would be more impressive than your time machine pictures. I am disappointed that you feel I am trying to impress you. Why would I bring money from 2036 with me? Isn't that something that could easily be faked? Now, if I told you I was your cousin's brother and I knew about the scar on your left leg, that would convince you. Before you leave, you could videotape your departure and get it to us. That is an interesting idea. I will look into how to do that. 1. According to the Constitution, what do you think has the final word on choosing a president and why? 2. Do you think the Electoral College should be continued? 3. Why do you think the Bill of Rights was written? 4. What is your opinion on the Second Amendment to the Bill of Rights? 5. Does anyone know what industry is the largest U.S. political contributor? 6. Does anyone know who owns the majority of the solar power research and development companies? 7. Imagine you had all the money and power you desire. What do you see yourself doing? 8. What is the longest distance you ever ran and or walked at one time without stopping? 9. What is the longest period of time you went without food? 10. Do you know what cholera is and how to avoid getting it? December 21st, 2000. Very interesting argument, but I have a couple of questions. You described the word paradox as it refers to the idea of the existence of a problem that has no solution. Actually, the number one definition I read in the American Heritage Dictionary is a seemingly contradictory statement that may nonetheless be true. Also, what exactly is your definition of time travel? I was taught that time travel is strictly a local observation that can only be measured by the experience of an individual or single particle. Under that definition, the twin paradox of time dilation due to acceleration or gravity, and even sleeping can be considered time travel. You appear to be arguing against dematerialization and or space-like trips under the limits of special relativity in a single world line. I do agree that the grandfather paradox is not possible simply because the classic problem is presented as an observer's issue magnified to a universal issue. Your statement about observations are correct when you isolate the experiences to a single world line. However, the reason there are no paradoxes is because the universe doesn't care how we react to its handiwork. In a universe made up of infinite world lines, or the super universe, everything is possible and has 100% probability, therefore, no paradoxes. Q. Where do you think all the water came from in the Great Flood stories? I believe the explanation for the Great Flood stories originated with the changes that occurred near the Mediterranean at the end of the last ice age. Even on this world line, there is a great deal of evidence to support the fact that sea levels did change radically in isolated areas worldwide. I also heard someplace that if the ice mass on Antarctica melted today, sea level worldwide would rise about 100 feet. I'm not exactly sure that's true. Peace to you also. 30th of December 2000. Greetings and happy holidays, everyone. I am very surprised and delighted to see the conversations going in the direction it has on this thread. Unknowingly, you all have stepped into the real mystery of time travel that remains speculative in 2036. Based on a couple of questions I see here, I will try my hardest to describe what we in 2036 think space-time looks like and how it behaves. Please keep in mind that I realize how easy it is to dismiss what I say. First, I'm trying to do this from memory. Imagine you were back in 1911 trying to explain a jet engine to the Wright brothers. However, there are some very basic properties of quantum theory that support this model today. I appreciate the fact that you are reading this with an open mind. Q. If parallel universes do exist, did they start at the same time? It is thought that the event called the Big Bang was the start of not only this world line or universe, but all world lines and all universes that make up the super universe. It is also thought that the super universe can be imagined as an expanding sphere with the Big Bang in the center. Individual world lines or timelines can be imagined as lines originating at the center and trending toward spiraling around the sphere until they reach the edge. The individual world lines expand in length and widen as you follow them from the center. Each individual moment or event on a world line has infinite possibilities or outcomes. Imagine this as a single point with infinite lines shooting away from it, which in turn are made up of points with their own possibilities and outcomes. Now remember, these individual world lines with all these points and possibilities are defined by their ability to hold their inhabitants in time-like trips only, which is no faster than light travel. Now consider the reality of a spinning or electrified black hole Kerr. Penrose diagrams of these oddities show mathematically that you can make simulated space-like trips, which are faster than light, through the singularity without being destroyed. In order to do this without wiping out most modern physical laws, you must travel to an alternate world line or universe. Therefore, if multiple world lines exist, infinite world lines exist. I'm trying to imagine a super universe with infinite possibilities and world lines. I think of a room with mirrors on all the walls. You are aware of your captivity, But as you look into the distance, you see an infinite number of yous and an infinite number of mirrored rooms. The gravity distortion machine allows you to step out of your room and into another next to you. The closer you are to your original room, the closer it looks like yours. The farther away, the stranger it looks to you. Q. John said, "If I go forward on your world line, the future will not be my future. I go home by going back to 1975 before I arrived and then going forward to 2036. A few people have asked me about this statement, so I will try to clarify it. On my world line, A, in 2036, I was given a mission to 1975. I turn my machine on and I jump to another world line, B, in 1975, with about a 2% divergence from A. From the very point I turn my machine off on B, I create a new world line just because I'm there. That line can be described as C and started when I got to B. I am now doing my mission on line C in 1975 when I discover a very good reason to go forward on C and see what happened. I turn my machine on and go forward on C to the year 2000, or 1998. When I turn it off, I start another line called D. So from my perspective, here we are on line D in the year 2000. In order to go home to line A, I must turn my machine on and go back on D until I reach C, which in turn would take me back to B, which in turn takes me to the point before I arrived on B. Then I go forward from that point to arrive on B back to A. If all this isn't enough to get your head spinning, here are some issues we're dealing with in 2036. 1. Did your world line D exist at all before I got here from C? Personally, I don't see how it couldn't. 2. What happened at the end of the world line at the edge of the super universe? 3. If there are infinite world lines and infinite possibilities and an edge to the super universe, doesn't that mean occurring events on world lines are staggered as they reach the edge? Time could end at any moment without warning. Happy New Year, everyone. Q. I think you're taunting us with our ignorance about the Constitution. It would be nice to be able to remind everyone about their rights and responsibilities, but I'm not here to judge you. I am not capable of that, nor would I want that in return. As you know, my interest is in history and in the paradox of thought. I do find it interesting how important the Constitution became to the average U.S. citizen's life, if even for a short moment. Q. Young people should look forward to the future while older people don't see much of the future. I think it's pointless to worry about politics if we're all doomed. It saddens me that you do not realize your true worth as a keeper of information and experience. Perhaps the end that we fear will open your eyes to your true value as an individual. Young people need wisdom. The captain of the ship knows where the lifeboats are. Q. In order for CERN to make a black hole, they would have to travel faster than light. I'm pretty sure they have a number of experiments going on at some time at CERN. The one I'm referring to involves very high energies using protons. From my historical perspective on my world line, I do recall the issue was a point of contention about 18 months or so ago. There were some scientists who thought the experiments were too dangerous to try. The time travel I refer to does not require faster than light travel, and due to multiple world realities, paradoxes do not occur. Natural time machines do exist. I fear our conversation is in danger of turning to conflict due to an effect that is quite common on these boards. I realize what I'm saying is quite hard to swallow, and it causes debate, whether serious or entertaining. It is even more difficult when you come into the middle of a conversation or a series of questions that are a few weeks old. Your points are all quite valid, and I have discussed them at length on this and other boards for quite a while. I do not wish to antagonize you. However, we both know the Tipler cylinder is only a thought experiment to explain the very real physics behind Kerr black holes. As to your other comments, again, they are all true as defined by the limits of space-like trips or single world lines. It does not account for travel between world lines. I have never claimed to be a physicist or an expert on what the CERN laboratory is doing at any given moment, so I feel it pointless to argue about what they may be doing in the future or what breakthroughs they will or might have. My comment about the CERN labs are in the reference to the particle accelerators in general and other questions that have come up in the past. The major physics breakthroughs for controlling gravity distortion does happen at CERN in your future. Heck, we haven't even touched on Z-field compression yet. I suppose I could say that I was the one who traveled in time and convinced them to change their experiments, but even I would have a hard time believing that one, and I do not wish to insult your intelligence. Thank you for trying to answer these questions from December 30th, 2000, but I really do not expect that anyone can. I thought I would share with you things we wonder about. Your logic about me is quite correct, but again I must state that I am not trying to get you or anyone else to believe or buy anything. As far as evidence goes, I have decided to try an experiment with you that may be more convincing. It involves the travel of information at faster than light. In fact, I have dropped at least 3 little gems like this no one has even picked up on. You said you are confused by the 5100 story. I will explain further. In 2036, it was discovered, or at least known after testing, that the 5100 computer was capable of reading and changing all the legacy code written by IBM before the release of that system and still be able to create new code in APL and BASIC. This is the reason we needed it in 2036. However, IBM never published that information because it would have probably destroyed a large part of their business infrastructure in the early 70s. In fact, I would bet the engineers were probably told to keep their mouths shut. Therefore, if I were not here now telling you this, the information would not be discovered for another 36 years. Yes, I would bet there is someone out there who can do the research and discover that I am telling the truth. There must be an old IBM engineer out there someplace that worked on the 5100. They just might not have ever asked if I hadn't pointed it out.